Many NFL scouts are raving about Mason Armstrong, labeling the next phenom to come out of college thanks to leading LSU to a national championship and winning the Heisman Trophy last season. Scouts are even saying he could be better than Patrick Mahomes if he could continue and live up to the hype for his next 2 seasons. Be sure to like the video and subscribe for more Road to Glory content to follow Mason Armstrong's journey from LSU phenom to the NFL.
Game 1 of Mason's sophomore season comes here against the Warhawks as he starts off with a strike to a familiar receiver in Malik Neighbors. Chung plays the not in there though as Mason keeps the option for himself and backsteps his way across the defense and hightails it to the end zone as UL Monroe does not stand a chance in this one. Here in the second, Jack Mashburn gets in on the action as he is on the recipient end of his crossing route and afterwards gets open on the scene for his first touchdown of the season. I still have no idea why we are still in this game as we are up by 1,000,000, but we place the Dak in UL Monroe's dreams by finding Lacey again as we dominate the Warhawks 52-3 thanks to Mason's 578 yards through the air. Back-to-back weeks here against Louisiana Cupcake teams as we face LA Tech this week and we start off to Kyron Lacey before evading the pressure and scampering to the right pylon for a tutty. After waiting for what seemed like forever in the pocket, we had to evade before performing a Mahomes-like throw to Brian Thomas, who could have crawled his way into the end zone. The other receivers did not want to be outdone as Chris Hilton finally makes his way open before Bailey getting hogged by a shoestring, and Mason keeps the ball for himself as he accounts for another rushing score. New breakout star Kyron Lacey has been all over the place thus far as he has become the new favorite slot as he gets the ball once again just shy of the end zone as Mason keeps it for himself to defeat LA Tech 48-20. Finally, here after a couple weeks, we have an SEC foe with Mississippi State as they start off with a lead. However, we would fight back as Mason finds Malik Neighbors over the middle and Brian Thomas in the corner of the end zone as he dusts by the secondary. This has been a low-scoring affair, but the connection to tight end Mashburn aims to change this as we advance past midfield and Mason evades the pressure on the next set of downs to sprint to the right side and make this defender literally touch grass kid before making his way to the pylon. Sometimes I feel bad for these receivers as they are recipients of hospital passes like this from the Neighbors. Now Mason is simply feeling himself just like Johnny Manziel did in his documentary as he threads the needle deep on the seam to Chris Hilton as we finally have some breathing room in this one. The fact that Mason actually underthrew Malik here actually saved him from a pick as Neighbors had to come back to this ball but comes down with it as Mashburn barely stays in bounds in the back of the end zone for this touchdown reception. After only scoring 7 points to a quarter and a half, our offense is slowly starting to explode as Mason makes another throw on the run to Kyron Lacey and dials a rope to Brian Thomas Jr. in the red zone to go up by 25. However, Mason has struggled to stay in the pocket as he has to run for his life on the edge, but luckily he can still hit his star players like Malik Neighbors and he uses his legs again to keep the ball for himself as we defeat the Bulldogs 45-24. This week sets the stage for a marquee top 15 SEC matchup with LSU against Tennessee as Mason comes out firing here in the rain with a dime to Brian Thomas right before the safety comes in with a bang, and on the goal line he finds John McBride on the slant to take the lead. In Mason's second season as LSU star quarterback, he is looking better than ever as he is straight up dominating opponents as he does here by keeping the option for himself and scampers for a long touchdown run, giving them a 2-possession lead. However, we get too big for our own britches and throw a pick right to the safety turn scene as now Tennessee has the lead against us, but Mason once again turns the tides back in our favor as he scrambles since nobody will break free and weaves inside and outside of the volunteer defense before finally being brought down to the 16-yard line. The momentum doesn't stop here as Kyron Lacey receives a touchdown score and Mason keeps rolling along by dotting up to Brian Thomas on third and the distance to Livy Dunn's place before getting the first down. Mason and Kyron Lacey connect yet again for the second score of the game, but Tennessee puts that to bed by taking the lead before Mason runs for his dear life to the right side of the end zone to regain what was ours in the first place. With a chance to seal the game here in the fourth, Mason makes a wild throw on the run to Jack Mashburn deep on the right side before finding Brian Thomas once again to defeat Tennessee 42-28. Game 5 comes here against the 16th ranked Gators here in the swamp, but this time we are staying in the swamp strike style as Mason finds John McBride for 24 and keeps the ball for himself on the goal line to establish ourselves early on. Now at 14 in the second, Mason has to run for his life once again before throwing the ball to Malik Neighbors as he takes a beating afterwards for a first down. The Gators secondary still has not learned anything under Billy Napier as they leave Brian Thomas wide open down the right sideline and we risk it all on the goal line with his pass to Kyron Lacey for a 3-possession lead. At this point, Mason and the Tigers are just bending forward over as he throws a bullet on the run to Brian Thomas and to Malik Neighbors as the Gators cannot keep up. The end result will come in another score from Mason to Kyron Lacey as we took over the swamp 49-21. I really have no idea why our AD and the NCAA has us scheduled against Wyoming of all teams as we're going to straight up make an embarrassment out of them as Mason starts off hot with a big time throw to Kyron Lacey and Malik Neighbors to take the lead. We must have given them a fat check as they simply cannot match up with this offense as Malik Neighbors is on the recipient end of a deep pass, breaks the tackle, and easily strolls his way into the end zone for 6. The chunk plays were not in there either as we are still in the first quarter and Brian Thomas is on the deep end of the throw from Mason and he runs his way into the end zone as this is not even a contest. Still here in the first as these receivers are just going back and forth as Malik Neighbors returns to burn the defense for yet another chunk play touchdown. We finally made it to the second quarter and yet again Brian Thomas is open deep as Mason escapes and corks one on a rope to him on the the right side as we blow out Wyoming in the first half and dominate them by a score of 56-17. Mason would throw for over 500 yards and 6 touchdowns, a majority of those coming in the first half of play. After this game, we would finally claim the #1 rank in the first college football playoff poll, but yet we have another tough ranked SEC matchup against 25 Texas A&M. With A&M's NIL deal falling apart, I don't think they have the talent to coincide with our team, as Mason connects with Brian Thomas to bring us on the goal line before he bulldozes his way up the gut of the defense to take the lead. Once again, these receivers are on the other end of a hospital pass as Mason is throwing these for some reason, and after Mason throws a much nicer ball to Jack Mashburn so we can take a 2-score lead. A&M would cut our lead down the 9, but they still don't have a chance of catching Mason as he comes free down the right sideline and back steps before finally being brought down after a huge scramble. Mason would eventually connect with Malik Neighbors on the slant to continue the ruining of A&M's chances of succeeding anywhere as we defeat the Aggies on the road 24-14. Halfway through the season, we sit atop of the SEC West, but with a daring matchup against the #4 ranked Alabama Crimson Tide. But in this night game atmosphere, Mason and the Tigers have to take advantage of being in Death Valley as we start off with a rope to Kyron Lacey on the seam and on the slant to take the lead. However, Bama would climb back on top, but Mason has every strength needed to dethrone Alabama with his mobility and his BDE energy. I'll let you figure out what that means as he unleashes a missile to Hilton for a long touchdown to tie it up. And the next drive, we find Malik Neighbors deep along the left sideline when we get the ball back to regain the lead right before halftime. However, things will go downhill fast as Mason is faced by 4 defenders, which forces an error throw to be picked off by the Bama defense. Now down by 2 scores, it's on Mason's shoulders to try and lead them back in this game as he finds Chris Hilton on back-to-back throws to squeeze the lead down to 7. But Alabama would prove to be too much as they went down the field to score again, as Mason has no choice to look for something quick and deep to score like we're trying to get to second base. But he gets sacked as Latham scoops the ball up and runs his big self in the end zone, crushing our hopes for an undefeated season and a possible SEC championship aspirations.